to the Halal Fantasy Football League. This is the week 2 recap. Um, was a pretty interesting second week. There was a bunch of upsets. That was pretty crazy. And then there's just some weird trends that I think are just weird. I don't think it's going to bear out for the rest of the season. So, like, some of the things, like, we looked at the Saints, and the Saints were like, they just destroyed Carolina last week, and we're like, oh, okay, that looks crazy, but it was Carolina. And then they come back this week and then they destroy the Cowboys. So it looks like the Saints are real and legit, or the Cowboys look like frauds again. But it's neither here nor there. Even like playoff teams like Baltimore going down 0-2, the Lions falling to Tampa Bay, even though Tampa Bay is actually a pretty good team too. And then just a wild Monday Night Football game with Atlanta just coming out of nowhere and beating the Eagles. It was a pretty interesting NFL week. And it kind of did translate to our playoffs. I mean, not our playoffs. It did translate to our matchups. So it was kind of interesting. So let's just get into it. I don't have a lot of time. I just got off of this seminar and just got home. So I'm just here to record so we can just pump this video out. Let's start from the top. This is me versus Morgan, who had a really good game. Someone said that he probably would have beat everybody else. Is that the truth? It is the truth. Morgan had the second highest score, and he just ran into a buzzsaw, which was my team. I mean, that's what happens when you have Christian McCaffrey. Oh, what was that? Did you say McCaffrey didn't play? That's exactly what happened. It was I wasn't expecting this, but Kamara was the star. He might be the high point getter for the week. 45 points. Devon Achane scoring nearly 30 points. And Malik Neighbors, 23.7 points. So really outstanding scores from my team. Even the receivers off my bench, like Jackson Smith and Jigba, having 17 points. Strong all around. The running backs, just dominant. The receivers, decent. And then not much else to write home about anybody, but Trey McBride had a super solid tight end game, 15.7. Morgan's strong game was Jalen Hurts, having 28.42. Amon-Ra St. Brown is back. So I told you he would bounce back. Just wasn't enough to support you. Devontae Smith had a good game. Najee Harris had a Najee Harris game. Bijan Robinson had a decent game. He looks solid. Kincaid had an okay game for a tight end. Zay Flowers had a strong flex position for you. And your Pittsburgh D was really strong. Off the bench, you didn't play Drake London. I thought you did. I guess you... Yeah. I don't know how much it would help because your wide receivers were all strong already. So you played it right. It was just not your week because you ran into me. Yeah. Next up, Eric versus Mike. Oh boy. Mike loses this. Eric pulls out another win. Lamar Jackson had almost 20 points. DK Metcalf, after what did he do last week? I don't know what he did last week. I think he was pretty average. No, I think he was okay last week. He's actually been one of the better receivers this year. 23.9. Eric had a donut. Christian Watson didn't play. Travis Etienne had a decent running game. Josh Jacobs, another decent running game. Taysom Hill busted today. Breece Hall had a big time game, 22.3. Dicker had 11.8, and then your Dallas D gave you negative points, and still you won. Your bench wasn't too much stronger, but Mike, I already roasted you about this, Mike, but we'll just rehash it real quick. Richardson, like I said, all tools, but not, I don't know if he has the skills to be consistent, but decent. Xavier Worthy, I told you not to overreact. I like Worthy, but there was a reason why Worthy is not a first rounder, and Marvin Harrison is. Marvin Harrison did all of this work in the first quarter. It's like 2 touchdowns, 130 receiving yards. So it's actually not that OP because he had 2 touchdowns. Just receivers rarely get more than 1 touchdown, especially this year and these first 2 weeks. And we're going to talk about it a little bit later. So if you had played him, you would have won. It was that simple. You also had a donut from Ingram. Singletary and Taylor, decent running back scores. Zach Moss, not much. Reichard had a strong kicking game, and your Kansas D was okay. So, tough one for Mike. And so this loss is not one of those where it was just a tough game, hard fought game. It was more decision making. And so, let that be a lesson. If you drafted someone in the first, second, or third round, unless they're out or on IR like McCaffrey, you start them. No questions. I don't know. It's hard to find busts, but hopefully you can bounce back. You do have a really good receiver. I told you, I'll take him off your hands if you don't want to use him. All right. Darren versus James. Oh boy, this is as nail biter as it can get for a fantasy game. 101.44 to 101.38. That's 0.06 differential. This is one of those where you got to wait until the next day, right? Because there might be corrections, like stat corrections, that will swing the game. Darren had Patrick Mahomes, only 17.14. Mike Evans, not much. Cooper, not much. Bijan had a strong game. Oh, I made a mistake. Morgan has Brian Robinson, not Bijan Robinson. So, Mason, another good game as the handcuff for McCaffrey. Travis Kelce down to 1.2. Rashee Rice, another good game from him, 16 points. Tucker, pretty solid, 15.7. And the San Francisco D, 8.6. Tua Tagovailoa, this one is a heartbreaker because he had yet another concussion. And scary and sad to see. Knocked him out of the game. I mean, that's another one that would have swung the fantasy football score. Chris Godwin had a really good game. Just like destroyed my Lions. Jamar Chase had a sad game. Kyron Williams, a decent running game. Montgomery, a decent running game. Isaiah Likely, I think you got baited by him too. 3.6 because he had a good game last week. But you have a elite tight end, right? Kittle? Yeah, should have played Kittle. That's another thing that would have swung the score. I think if you have Kittle, you have Sam Laporta, even though he's not doing good. You have Travis Kelce, even Mark Andrews, even though he's on that one is I'm a little bit torn because we still have to see it. There are certain players that you just have to start and live and die with them. Aubrey, huge kicking game, 10.8. And then your Seattle D didn't do too much. Off the bench, Purdy had only a decent 18.96. But man, this was the game of the week for fantasy-wise. Richie versus Mike B, another close one. And this is one that Richie was like down to the wire. With Joe Mixon ready to take the lead for Richie, and then he gets hurt. Couldn't get him just a couple more points. It was just fell short. Baker Mayfield had a good, decent game. I mean, well, fantasy football wise, okay, but he looks crazy out there on the field. It just doesn't translate stats wise. CeeDee Lamb had a strong receiving game. Cooper Kupp is another one who got hurt. That's another Rams receiver who fell. Pacheco, he's another one who got hurt, but he put up a solid score for you. James Conner, really good. Okonkwo is your tight end, and not much there. We already talked about Joe Mixon and then Groupie and Indianapolis, not much else. Alec Pierce had a strong game for you, so um, he seems to be Richardson's number one go-to guy, at least so far, with 5 targets. And this score is kind of like really, really boosted by that touchdown. That's another one that would have swung it. And then for Mike B, he played Coleman, who got a donut, but Kyler Murray played his brains out, hooking up with Marvin Harrison, 3 passing touchdowns, 59 rush yards, big time quarterback score. Robinson, I guess the strategy was go for him because what's his name, handcuff for Puka Nakua. Jameer Gibbs had an okay game. I think he can do much better, and he'll probably do better as the offense gels more. Rashad White got held in check big time. Mark Andrews, okay, here, a little bit back. He's a little bit back. Not quite the outstanding scores, but this is above average for tight ends. J.K. Dobbins had a strong game. Harris, I guess it works out for him because he joins Harbaugh, a Harbaugh team, and they run the ball. They're much more different from the previous coaching regime. So that might be a pretty valuable underrated pick up there. Harrison Butker only 10. Oh, that I shouldn't say only 10, even though kickers have been going wild. Cleveland D 11. Calvin Ridley busted out for you 22.8. I told you he'll bust out here and there. It's just hard to predict. Tony Pollard another strong game. Man, those are some guys you could have used in the starting lineup. Not that you needed them. And then Aaron Rodgers 17.4. Melchor versus Brad. One of the lower scoring games, but Brad ekes this one out. Like a head-to-head Jaden Daniels 16-16, CJ Stroud to Jaden Daniels. That's a below average quarterback score. Tyreek Hill down to 5.2. I guess that will really his stock is a little bit tanked by losing Tua. Deebo Samuel had a nice little breakout game today. Henry too had a good game for Gary. Madison not much. Parkinson, Stephon Diggs not much. Elliott not much, and the Baltimore D kind of underwhelming too. Off of your bench, not much else could have helped you. For Brad, you already talked about Stroud. Garrett Wilson didn't do much. DJ Moore didn't do much. Saquon had a decent running score, almost nearly matching him head to head with Henry. Not much from Ford and not much from Laporta. I wouldn't quit on him though because it's one of those things. As soon as you bench him, he's gonna break out. Plus, I don't know who else you have as a tight end. No one else? Yeah, just set it and forget it. Ramondre Stevenson had a big time game. Jake Moody didn't do too much, and the Los Angeles Charger defense did okay. And then the last one, this was another exciting one. This one was a come from behind one from a dominant kicking game from Aaron. Josh Allen didn't do too much here. 11.26. Even though they pull out that win. Jared Goff kind of outplayed him, even though he technically had a bad game. Justin Jefferson had a big time game, 21.3, including a 97-yard touchdown. That was insane. Jalen Waddle didn't do too much. Another one that's hurt by a hurt Tua Tagovailoa. James Cook, you might have gotten the running back steal of the draft. Jalen Warren didn't do too much. Kyle Pitts kind of came back down to earth a little bit. Tank Dell didn't do too much. Younghoe Koo had a decent kicking score, and your New York defense is right about average. You didn't have too much from your bench except Herbert, who would have outplayed Allen. It's interesting. For Aaron, Devontae Adams had a strong game. Not much from McConkey. Aaron Jones had a pretty mid running game. Devontae Williams, I don't know if that's overachieving or average, but I don't know. They look bad, right? Denver's like 0-2 now, but at least he might be the clear cut number one. Brock Bowers, there you go. There's that first round tight end grade, first round in the actual draft. I know he wasn't drafted that high. That that helps him there. Chris Olave 10.9. Kaimi Fairbairn, he's the one who got you that win from behind. That's probably why CJ Stroud has no points. And then you have the Chicago doing not much. Joe Burrow had 21.12. That's a strong, I mean, a decent quarterback score. So then that wraps up the week 2 recap. I know there's like some questions about um, like changing the scores. We definitely can change it, but I'll try to like because I know Darren was mentioning in the text that uh, running quarterbacks seem OP, or maybe not that. That I think what you were saying was passing quarterbacks that don't run are underpowered, and then kickers are overpowered. One of the things though is like you have to kind of look at the first 2 weeks and look at the trends of the entire league, because if you look at the quarterbacks, it's like the number of passing touchdowns, there isn't much across the league, right? You have Derek Carr and Baker Mayfield with 4 each, Darnold and Murray having 4 each. Murray got like 3 of them just this week. I don't expect that to continue, so I expect better passing stats going forward. Just the way they move from like preseason going down to 3 games, and then starters not even playing in the preseason anymore. They're actually using the regular season to ramp up. That's probably what you're seeing with the passing quarterbacks. So that's one of the things. And the kickers being OP, I do not expect that either, because you look at some of these guys, there's guys who have 5 field goal games. That's I don't expect that to be the norm either. So they may seem overpowered for now, but I expect like a regression to the mean, especially for both of those stats. I do understand that like I have a difference in that the distance makes it plays an impact in those field goal yards, and that's more about like degree of difficulty. There's been more long field goals, so that's kind of in there, but I'll explain like the reason why we have what I tried to do with the scores. Like I think I've seen that before, where you match what the quarterback does, 6 points for a passing touchdown, and some even match the yardage, like point for point, the same amount of points for yards for passing, receiving, and running are all the same. Then what starts to happen is the quarterbacks become super valuable. They just and they become the ones that uh, can swing a game, which isn't bad. There's nothing wrong with that. But what I try to do is normalize all positions. I try to keep quarterback points down. I try to boost wide receiver points up. Try to keep the running back points in the middle. Yeah, so I try to keep the positions within striking distance, and we do also like to mirror the fact that how players are valued in the league is going to be mirrored in fantasy football. So we can try to do some things like boost passing stats. If we boost passing stats, the problem with that is um, it will help the Brock Purdy's, but it also helps the dual threat quarterbacks because they pass the ball too. So really, what are you doing? You're moving the goalposts for both types of quarterbacks, and then for like the fact that dual threats or having versatility has become more valuable. And then that's just how it is, right? That's the reason why the dual threat quarterbacks are more valuable in fantasy, and it's the reason why running backs that can receive are more valuable. And I think that's league agnostic. The only way that you can kind of like control that, I don't know if you guys want to do that, is just keep stats according to your position. So like that means get rid of all the running stats for the quarterback, get rid of any running stats for the wide receivers, get rid of receiving stats for the running backs. And then they're truly judged by their position, but then it no longer kind of reflects the value that they have in the league. So those are just things to consider. Again, if you're looking at the here, Alvin Kamara just busted out. His average is the highest, but you see, at least the quarterbacks and the running backs are kind of in striking distance of each other. The wide receivers just are way down, but I think that's tied to the trend of there not being too many passing touchdowns and the fact that offenses need to improve as the season goes on. So I expect a little bit more normalization. And the thing with like the kicker, they are a little bit OP, but I do like the fact that there's a degree of difficulty. I mean, it's what's crazy is like I seen like this I seen this thing about kickers are currently 35 of 37 on 50 plus yard field goals this season. That's crazy. The only two missed attempts were both from Ravens kicker Justin Tucker. So take that for what you will. It's just weird trends early in the season. So that's kind of how it's been. Anyways, I don't have too much time. We started this late, and it's just been a busy week. So we'll call it quits here. So we'll see you guys later.